Man, and I thought this show was good before, but after going over this episode and preparing my notes for one heck of a breakdown, I don't mind saying, I'm excited to discuss this all with you. I'm even more blown away by how many different levels this show operates on. Episode 2 is an incredible info dump, not only for Ms. Marvel information, but Muslim culture and also India-Pakistan history. I learned so much today, and you're about to as well. So let's break it down, and because this is a Marvel show, we'll start with the Kamala stuff with her powers. She learns a lot about her powers and her family history this episode, because that's where her powers seem to come from. Bruno, Sir Friendzone Jr., helps her out during a montage. I love a good montage. I like the line where he asks Kamala how it feels, her power, and she says, like an idea come to life, because she's wanted this for so long, and here it is. I thought that was a wonderful line. This is a very well-written episode. You see her use her embiggening kind of ability a little bit, but through these new powers, but that's a nod to the comics a little bit. I didn't love the Black Widow reference. I mean, I guess it was a little clever, but I also thought it was a little tasteless considering, Black Widow died. But anyway, it's okay. Kamala's a teenager. Not everything's going to land. She's finding her sense of humor. All right, her power also, it's established by Bruno with an incredible app, comes from within. The bangle doesn't give her powers, it unlocked her powers. I think that's an important distinction because that means that no one can just take the bangle away from Kamala and she would lose her abilities. But the bangle's important. The bangle's important. She does not have super strength, and I think that's a really great choice. It's funny because Kamala Khan is not at all athletic, and she's very uncoordinated. So while this is an idea come to life, there is a big contrast between, I'm sure, how Kamala imagines herself as a hero and how she actually handles herself at these early stages. I think it's very, very funny, and how I'm sure most of us would probably come across as a superhero in the early days. So I think that's charming and, funny. She gets the idea to create platforms to walk on, watching Bruno play a video game, which I interviewed the director of this episode, and she talked about that in our interview. I interviewed the directors for the first episode as well. Check that out. Link down below. But she actually did that by impulse, you might recall, sneaking back into her house after AvengerCon last episode. But now she's trying to do it intentionally, so she's working on that. She creates a slip and slide. And Bruno points out some writing on the bangle, and Kamala says it's either Arabic or Urdu, and I bet at some point someone's going to translate it. I'm surprised nobody at the festival could translate it. I'm surprised they're not getting on translating the bracelet. They're not on that faster, but they'll probably get to it eventually. And Bruno and Kamala describe her powers as hard light. But it's Nightlight that is stuck. Oh, such a funny name. With Zoe, the name Zoe bestowed upon her, thanks to a social media blow up. Zoe, you gotta admit, she's a good entrepreneur. She's very kind to the, Nightlight. She's not making fun of her or anything, but she is, if Nightlight's not gonna get anything for this, Zoe's gonna try and do it. So her social media is blowing up, and she's also making Nightlight famous, because when they're at the mosque and Kamala saves that boy, someone's like, it's Nightlight. So I thought that was very funny. Although I have to say, with her light up mohawk from her homemade cosplay costume, she does look a little bit like a Ms. Marvel Nightlight. I think that's funny. But anyway, Zoe got on the radar of the DODC, Department of Damage Control, and there's a hilarious interrogation, which reminds us, I think, very well of the No Way Home interrogations. That's how that guy broke Ned the very same way, playing good cop and bad cop himself. I thought that was great. He's really funny. And they're combing the tri-state area, including mosques, after Zoe inadvertently gives away a description of what Nightlight looks like, or might look like. I mean, she did have like a mask on, basically. But anyway, Kamala's nose, also in class, glows at one point, and it's hard for her to get rid of it. But I thought that was very interesting because it leads to our discussion about the new boy in school, Kamran. Now, in the comics, he's a fellow Inhuman. Remember, in the comics, Kamala Khan is an Inhuman, and there's a Terrigen bomb that goes off, which is the instigating, moment for not just Kamala, but for a number of characters in her world. One being Kamran, who is someone who in the comics grew up, their families were friends before his family moved away, and then he comes back to town. And he is a romantic interest. There's a love triangle between Kamala, Bruno, and Kamran in the comics as well. Now, in the comics, he has, I think, powers that are similar to what they've decided to go for in the MCU show for Kamala. So it makes me wonder if they decided that's where they got the idea to go in this direction from seeing Kamran in the comics. His whole body glows and he can fire energy or charge objects with it, like Gambit, basically. Gambit likes to charge playing cards, but he, of course, can charge whatever he wanted to. That's just his style. We were so close to a Gambit movie, although it didn't sound like that good from what Channing Tatum revealed recently. All right, so anyway, in the comics, Kamran was actually, was baiting Kamala and turned her over to the Nobili crime family, who had also been turned inhuman by the same Terrigen bomb. It changed Kamala, it changed Kamran, and it changed the Nobili crime family. But here, of course, there is no Terrigen bomb. But there does seem to be the genies. And Clandestine, as I've told you before about the show, is a group of genies. In the comics, there were some jinn in that, and I think over the years it evolved into a group entirely of jinn. But so basically, Kamala gets herself caught in a honey trap once again, with Kamran as the bait. And it's a very good honey trap. By the way, when she sees him at the party, that is the hat that she has so famously worn in the comics. So it was nice to see that. He's a hottie. He's a popular kid. He's got a great car. And that's, again, great writing because it allows the driver's test that she failed at the beginning of the show to come back here. What a great callback, because that's a way for them to spend time together, for him to help her with her driving. I think that's fantastic. She can talk Bollywood with him, and these are some funny Easter eggs. So Bazigar is a real Bollywood movie. But they talk about Kingo, who of course is Kumail Nanjiani's character from the Eternals, who's a Bollywood actor who is eternal, and so he plays different generations of himself. He just pretends to be his own, the next one in line. So that's why when they talk about Kamala's mother having a crush on Kingo and Kamran's mother having a crush on Kingo Sr., it's really the same person. And so I thought that was very clever. I would love Kumail Nanjiani to show up here. He's talked about Ms. Marvel. Now that I think about it, wouldn't it be great if they did some kind of autograph event or something? In addition to Captain Marvel coming to talk to Kamala, I think Kingo would really be a fantastic idea. I hope that is definitely what they're going to do. That'd be so great. I would just be I'm in Kumail Nanjiani, of course, right now is over in Obi-Wan. So I think that's great. I love Kumail Nanjiani. I'm so happy to see him part of the Disney family and getting pretty good opportunities. Still nothing that I think is a home run. But anyway, Bruno's into this stuff. He saw Bazigar, right? I'm sure he has some thoughts on Kingo, one of them, right? I thought it was funny when Kamran called him Brian intentionally. That was very funny. But Kamran, as I said, he's an excellent honey trap. He's just the right amount of forward. He's so nice to everyone. He just seems like a Prince Charming that's walked out of a fairy tale for Kamala. But that's exactly his intention. He is definitely, literally, too good to be true. After Kamala's social media friendly save, because it's hilariously bad, and also it was just perfect for social media because what does that little boy like? Ice cream pizza, and that really helps it trend. I thought it was very funny, by the way, when Kamala was like, just think of a plate or bowl of ice cream pizza. She wasn't even sure how it was served. That was great. So that brings them to the attention of the DODC, Department of Damage Control. She makes a run for it pretty well, not bad considering how little training she has from those drones and everything. Kamran picks her up in his awesome car, and his mother's in the back seat. Meet the parents, because she's really wanted to meet Kamala. So next week, we should probably learn a little bit more about Clandestine. I'm very excited about that. All right, now speaking of family, let's talk about Kamala's family. Now, this is great stuff. So they're having a dinner, and her father says, we moved to America so our children could be anything they wanted, like a superhero, because that's what Kamala wants, and I think it's what she's going to get. But anyway, they also talk about the Pakistan-India Civil War. And that, I think, first off, I want to talk about Nakia's comment earlier in the episode where she's talking about their history class and how history is written by the oppressors, is how she puts it. And she says, we spend all this time on ancient Rome and Greece, but hardly anything on Persia and Byzantium. Now, I looked it up because my school didn't spend very much time on this either, unfortunately, which is a real shame because this is fascinating. So Rome renamed Byzantium Constantinople, which went on to become Istanbul. So the Might Be Giants song, messed it up. Constantinople, Istanbul is missing Byzantium as the history of that great city. That's really fascinating stuff. So there was the partition, and that was when the British India territory was split up into modern India and Pakistan. And it was done a lot by religion, separating Muslim from non-Muslims. And that displaced, and this was me, if anyone, I know some of you are watching, you might be a history buff of this or from the region that we're discussing, would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. But it seems that was displaced 10 to 20 million people and was one of the largest refugee crises of all time. Now listen to this. Okay, now it gets even more interesting because the way it connects to other things that you might be more aware of if you're in the West. So this took place in 1947, and the last viceroy to India, Lord Louis Mountbatten, you know that name, that's Prince Philip's surname, Mountbatten. This individual is actually the uncle to Prince Philip. So Lord Mountbatten was supposed to avoid the partition. Britain did not want to split up the whole India territory, but Lord Mountbatten made the fateful decision to go with the partition because it would allow for a faster withdrawal from the territory for Britain. So, it's a little bit like the horrible things that happened when America pulled out of Afghanistan. So that's fascinating. So Lord Mountbatten made a really big error there and had a horrible impact on the people of India and Pakistan. Really devastating, not only at that time, but for decades after. I know some of you said that Pakistan and India are getting along a little bit better now, but they have been at odds for a very long time. It's one of the reasons that there's also two nuclear powers there, and that's to have the same kind. It's a little bit like, I believe, like a Cold War, a little bit like America versus Russia. So fascinating. So if you watch The Crown, you know exactly who Lord Mountbatten is. He's played by, speaking of Game of Thrones, that's that actor who's all over the place. As you might recall from the show The Crown, he would go on to be killed in 1979 by a bomb planted by the Irish, because this guy was involved in a lot of England ruling over a number of people who didn't want to be ruled over. And in this case, the Irish got him in 1979, quite tragically, with a bomb on his boat, which not only killed him, but several members of his family, including his two teenage grandsons. So back to the partition, Muniba's, Kamala's Kamala's grandmother, Sana, was a toddler at that time in 1947, and she was separated from her family, which, speaking of Russia, reminds me very much of the famous scene from Dr. Zhivago when they're trying to get on that train. So they're trying to get on this train with the partition to get to, they're forced to flee. And Sana was able to get back to her family, she said, by following a trail of stars, which her family just chalked up to, toddler speak. But when you think of, Kamala's powers, it makes you feel that maybe Sana's mother, who disappeared that night, created the trail of stars to lead her daughter back to her family so at least she would be safe. That's really tragic and amazing. I hope we get to see that scene. And so while they're talking about Kamala's great-grandmother, Aisha, the bracelet starts to glow, and Kamala has a vision of a figure who I believe is Aisha. Now, she calls up her grandmother, Sana, who was that little toddler, for answers. But, her grandmother is unfortunately suffering, it seems, a little bit from dementia. But sure enough, the bangle did belong to Aisha. It's the great-grandmother. So it goes Aisha, Sana, Kamala's mother, Muniba, and then Kamala, right? So these four women in a row, very powerful. I wonder if they could all potentially have powers if they put on the bangle. But anyway, that would be interesting. All right, so anyway, yes, that bracelet belonged to Aisha, and the grandmother, though, won't discuss it. She says it's a family secret, and Kamala's mother in particular would not want Kamala to know about this. So Kamala goes to the Illuminatis, get it? Like the Illuminati, but with aunties. I think that's very, very funny. And they do know a little bit about Aisha, because their families all kind of interconnect, from their time abroad in Pakistan, and then, of course, coming to America. So they say Aisha was cursed. Everything she touched, she cursed. Also, they accuse her of having secret affairs, a secret family, and they say she even killed a man during partition. And that makes me wonder if maybe she was doing that to try to protect her family, and so she had no choice. But this reminds me of that gossiping? It reminds me of in episode 1 when they're gossiping about that woman who left her fiancé to travel the world, and they put it in a negative light. And so I think anyone who doesn't follow what the community deems the right path, they're kind of villainized villainized by gossip. And I think that might be what happened to Aisha. So that's fascinating. All right, so then when she saves the boy, when Kamala saves the boy, she sees the same woman again, Aisha, I believe, again, only much clearer. And she looks stunning. And it reminds me a lot of Turning Red. All right, so anyway. So other things that I want to talk about that I thought were great during this episode. Bruno's the love triangle, which is, he's really feeling it. And it's one of the reasons I feel kind of bad for Bruno, because I know that Kamala might not be interested in him, but she has to see that he likes her, particularly the way he's acting once Cameron comes on the scene. So I thought, like, when she brushed him off after school for the driving test, again, she's a teenager, this stuff happens, but I hope she's learning from it. But Bruno, that's the reason he doesn't want to go, even though he got into this really highly coveted early immersion program at Caltech, because he doesn't want to leave Kamala, which is very sweet. But, it's tough. I think if his relationship with Kamala was real, it would survive that. But anyway, I told you I want him to go to the Wakanda program like he does in the comics. And I talked about that last week. And one of you in the comments was like, oh, Grace, that doesn't happen until much later in the story. So why are you even bringing it up now? Well, that's because I saw the first 2 episodes and I knew it was going to come up in episode 2. So it really bothers me that it's not the Wakanda program. But I loved the scene with the guidance counselor, who, again, I think is so funny. He's great when he says, this is that scene in the movies where the hero, this is the start to your hero's journey. And I thought that was fantastic. And I think it's true. I think Bruno really needs to go to that program. I think it would be a mistake for him to turn it down, especially because Kamala clearly likes somebody else. All right, I'm like, the friend zone will always be here for you, Bruno. Don't worry about it. You can do a long distance friend zone. All right, those really survive long distance relationships, friend zones. All right, maybe the absence will make the heart grow fonder. All right, so then the mosque storyline. I think the mosque storyline is fantastic, and they really focus on what it's like to be a Muslim woman. Nakia has some really interesting things that she has to say, especially when she's talking to Kamala in the ladies' room about her struggles, and that some groups feel that she's too white and other groups feel she's too ethnic, so she's had trouble kind of fitting in. And then she says that's one of the reasons she first put on the hijab, but once she did, she really felt at home and she feels this is who she is. And I thought discussing why she wears it and why she likes wearing it is very important to this kind of discussion in, I think, Western media, to explain that to people. I think it's great. I think it was handled really well. I think Nakia is a very cool character. And then also you see the women's part of the mosque, and it's in very poor condition, almost an afterthought to the men. Like, they say the women's separate entrance is to maintain our modesty, but why is the women's entrance in the side? Why do they have to sneak around the back? Why can't they enter the front, just a different door? Then they have a theft problem. There's a sneaker thief. They need those lockers with codes, like a theme park, so you don't have to have everyone have a key. Or the cheaper version of just paying someone to watch the shoes. I mean, why don't they just do that? So enough is enough. They're having an election for the mosque board. So Kamala encourages Nakia to run, and Nakia says, okay, as long as you be my campaign manager. And it's really nice to see Kamala have a really strong female friendship as well. Captain Marvel, one of the great things about her comic, which keeps getting rebooted because it never sells very well, but she always has really good female friends. She's very good friends with Jessica Drew, and it's really nice to see that depicted in comic books. So I like that that's continuing with Ms. Marvel and her having really good female friends as well. Then they go to campaign at the Eid Mubarak festival, and it's great that we have another party, just like Avengers Con last week. Now we have this Eid Mubarak festival for the mosque, and they highlight some different groups in the community, which I thought was really fun. And this is, of course, where the Illuminantes are gathered. But I also liked one discussion here when Nakia Nakia is also a very good negotiator. She's talking to that food cart guy about, put up my flyer and I'll make sure you have, exclusive catering. But she goes to Kamala's dad and she says, she's like, your best friend might be running, but I'm Kamala's best friend and I'm running. And, don't you want to show Kamala that women can accomplish anything and that women have a voice in our community? And she's very good. She really puts Kamala's dad on the spot. And then, speaking of Kamala's parents, I thought it was just wonderful to see Kamala make up with them so quickly. I'm glad that Kamala prioritized that. Of course, it's because she wanted to go to another party, but still, I think that they handled it very well because both of them came, both of them compromised. Her mother said yes to going to the party. She was more open to trusting Kamala because she doesn't want Kamala to rebel against her if it's, things are too strict. But Kamala volunteered to follow some really good guidelines to make her mother feel better, having both Bruno and Nakia there and coming home by 9. And it turned out great, although someone did trick her into drinking vodka. Never drink something that somebody hands to you that you don't see where it comes from. So her mom was right to some degree, but luckily her friends were there to look out for her. And it turned out great. She came home, and I liked when she came home and her parents broke the spell for a moment and asked her how the party was, and Kamala said magical. I thought that was really cute. I also like the nod to New Jersey Strong with her parents being Bon Jovi fans. I thought that was great. And they would like to have a cover band play at Amir and Taisha's wedding. And I thought Amir and Taisha were so great this episode. I also liked that Taisha, by the way, who didn't have a lot to do, but I thought it was great, her kind of knowing smile to Kamala, because she knows that Kamran's not their cousin. She knows that it's just a cover story, and I thought that was really great. Again, women sticking together. I thought that was nice. So that's episode 2 of Ms. Marvel. Really great show on multiple levels. What did you think of it? And what do you think of it now that maybe I might have pointed out some stuff that you missed? So although I do think it needs to do more to trend, it's got to be more aggressive if it wants to trend, because, it's got one more week up against Obi-Wan, and because Obi-Wan cheated with a lightsaber-like effect on Twitter. So that's why one of the reasons that everybody was talking about it today. And so it kind of sucks for Ms. Marvel. So I really don't like these shows debuting on the same day. I think it creates a winner and a loser, and Disney Plus should be making sure all their shows are winners. All right, but share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.